Please welcome on stage, I'm going to go here. Please welcome on stage Reto Wei, founder and CEO of Toilets for All. Our second panelist is Diana Yusuf, founder and CEO Change Water Labs. And last but not the least, our final panelist is Dominique Anglade, former Minister of Economy and Deputy Premier of Quebec. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I think, does anybody need, do you want to share?
Share. We can share.
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be more. There you go. Okay, so a bit about all our panelists. Our first panelist on the far right is Reto. And Reto is the co-founder and CEO of Toilets for All. After a successful career in international finance, culminating as the COO of UBS Investment Bank, Reto shifted his focus to solving one of the world's most pressing challenges, sanitation. Since 2020, he and his wife have led Toilets for All, delivering safe, sustainable toilet solutions to schools across the global south, impacting over 14,000 students in 6 countries. Our next panelist is Diana Yusuf, a scientist, innovator, and social entrepreneur transforming how we think about water and sanitation. As founder and CEO of Change Water Labs, Diana leads the development of breakthrough solutions like the iThrone, a waterless, waste evaporating toilet inspired by her work with NASA on recycling wastewater in space. More on that when we are going to get to the conversation. And our final speaker is Dominique Anglade, a trailblazing leader, former Minister of Economy and Deputy Premier of Quebec, and the first Black woman to lead a provincial party in Canada. A change maker in both public service and social impact, Dominique also co-founded CANPE, in the year of the devastating 2010 earthquake in Haiti, to bring support to the undeserved rural communities on their path to autonomy. Today, as professor of practice at HEC Montréal, her focus is on supporting the academic, private, and public sectors in achieving a sustainable transition. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. I'm going to start, first of all, with what's been on my mind as well when I was having a call with Reto. And I was telling him how, in many of the conversations that we've had, we always wonder how to remove or take away the stigma and taboo related to the conversation of toilets. And when I was preparing the introductory speech, I was thinking, it's at 1:30. Maybe I should ask people if they're ready to have this conversation just after lunch, you know? And then Reto took my doubts away, and he was right. It's never a wrong time to talk about it. We all need it, and it's as important that we start the conversation, if not now, then when, right? So, Reto, first question is how to take the taboo and stigma away from the conversation of toilets.
Yeah, thanks, and welcome, everyone. I mean, basically, for me, it's like I still remember when I heard the first time about 7 years ago from an entrepreneur that actually there are, at that time, almost 4 billion people that don't have access to toilets. I just absolutely couldn't believe it. I mean, I traveled in Africa, and I clearly knew there were issues, but I just, since then, I just feel like this is unacceptable. We absolutely need to do something, and we absolutely need to talk about shit and urine. Not only the problem, but there are tremendous opportunities, and that's what attracts me to that whole space. It is such an incredibly wide and varied field. There's actually an entrepreneur here who has a female urinal, Lapi. What I love about it is she's not in the water or ocean section, she's in inclusion. This field is so pervasive and goes across everything. There is a study by the University College of London, and it shows that it affects all 17 SDGs and 139 of 169 targets. So if we don't talk about it, we just fundamentally are not doing our job. And that's what I'm here for, and I talk shit any time of the day, I'm sorry. We have to address that. It took me 5 years to get there, but if we don't talk about it, we won't solve it. and we don't take the opportunities that it includes.
Well, exactly. Thank you, Reto. And based on that question, I wanted to ask Diana. Diana, your work, first of all, the conversation about not having the conversation. Second of all, your work is talking about the urbanization of cities and how more and more cities in the world are going to be urbanized. And if there's no water left, there's no plumbing. So tell us a bit about iThrone, please.
Right. So, so I had the idea of essentially tackling sanitation through evaporation when I learned about that human waste is actually 95% water. So as a scientist, I think in molecules, and I thought, well, water, the best way to deal with water if you want to get rid of it is evaporate it. So I was consulting to NASA, looking at how to recycle wastewater on the space station, and one of the ideas that I had was to use what are called breathable materials as a way to suck up the water content from a wastewater mass and convert that liquid water into vapor. And but you do that without heating it. So, you know, most of us think of evaporating water as like what your kettle does. Like you put a ton of heat into it and then you convert water into gas. Well, there are materials that turn water, liquid water into gas just by passing the molecular water through that material layer. So it came to me that this could be a very low energy, modular way to deal with water and wastewater. And what do these 4 billion people that Reto is referring to, what do they lack? They live in places that don't have hookups to water or sewage plumbing, so they can't flush. So the waste isn't going anywhere, so it gets, you know, it accumulates, gets messy really fast. And so could we eliminate the sort of reliance on hook up to water and hook up to sewer and still provide toilets? Well, that's when I connected, well, if waste is mostly water, then why don't we come up with an evaporative toilet? But we have to do it in a way that doesn't use a ton of energy, and that's where the material came in. So that's kind of like how, that's how my brain works, like how do I make these connections? It's a little abstract sometimes, but we got there. So, but essentially, I mean, for me, the reason that I needed to solve this problem is exactly what Reto says. I think of 13 SDGs as being impacted by sanitation, but yes, I mean, he's absolutely right, 17 SDGs.
Thank you so much, Diana. And we're going to come back to iThrones and also about the conversation of sanitation. Meanwhile, I wanted to ask Dominique, because today we're also focusing on the gender-based approach. And when we were having a conversation, Dominique, you spoke about a core memory from your childhood and what your mom said about about who the poorest person in the world is. Can you please share that story with us?
So thank you for the opportunity. I was raised by two feminists, father and mother, very engaged in the community. And just to give you an idea, my mom had published her thesis, and the title of her thesis was "The Work of Women or How Men Become Rich." That was the title. And when I was about 10, my mom asked me, who is poorer than the poorest man in the poorest country? So I'm like, well, I really can't think of anybody. And she said, his wife, and very often his children. And in everything I do, everything I think of, the idea of look at it from a gender-based situation is really critical. So when we decided to create a foundation called Campé 15 years ago in Haiti, we really targeted women with children and making sure that we were focusing the solutions of what we were bringing to the table with the women, because we knew at that point that if we touch them, we're going to touch not only their families, but the whole community. And that's what we've done, and that's what we've been able to build in Haiti.
So since we're at the conversation of Haiti, Dominique, I wanted to ask you, with the ongoing humanitarian crisis, how hard has it been to work with the local communities, especially because most of your work is done by the local communities and they collaborate with you? So how hard has it been? And the fact that you haven't been able to travel there in 5 years. So can you just share that with us?
So so Haiti is going through a very difficult time right now, and I know people do say it's always difficult in Haiti. However, there's been some times where it was much better than it is today. And because we work in rural areas, it's easier access because it's not in the capital. So we've been able to still provide the work and do the work in those rural areas. But when it comes to the capital, it's becoming really critical. But if there's not a solution anytime soon, it's going to be tougher and tougher. Every day that goes by, we are in a more difficult situation.
And on that note, just speaking about conflicts and how it's affecting the work, because also Diana and Reto, both of you all are working on the front line as well. So has there been, with the ongoing conflicts across the world and with all the headlines, I'm obviously guilty about it as well as a journalist, but the headlines are always focusing as if, we have this one headline and one issue, and then other conflicts and other issues just get sidetracked. So with all the conflicts raging across the world, how has that affected your work?
Yeah, as a startup, it's hard to go after the most difficult versions of the problem. So we haven't gone into conflict zones. We definitely have gone into contexts where the people who've suffered from conflict have, migrated to. So we've been in sort of humanitarian contexts with our work. But yeah, I mean, we're developing a new technology. Like you said, it's this iThrone. It's this waste evaporating toilet that essentially shrinks waste on site by 95% without using a lot of energy. And so, yeah, in order to test it, we have to go to places where it's a bit more stable. But there's so much need for this that as a startup, we focus on putting it in places where it will benefit people, and then as we evolve and become a more resilient company, then we absolutely want to be going after what's happening in crisis areas as well.
And you are working with the displaced population as well, right? So that's where the challenges are obviously faced on the ground.
I mean, that was what inspired me to do this, was sort of essentially what was happening in Syria at the time. I'm Middle Eastern, and seeing all that humanitarian migration, forced migration, it was intolerable to see that people are living in these really difficult context and losing their dignity and being endangered by the fact that they don't have access to a safe, clean toilet.
Absolutely. And dignity brings me to the conversation I had with Reto. You told me, Reto, that your work is about dignity as much as access. And can you share a moment from the field that made that crystal clear for you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, because clearly, we have local partners, because I'm absolutely a firm believer that how can we solve the issue? What we do is we support, we encourage, we establish collaborations also with universities. And so it's actually the local that are empowered, and they also come up with amazing solutions and innovations that we then try to supplement basically with engineering know-how from the to the global north. And that's what I'm always amazed. I mean, I call it the frugal innovations that are possible, because they can come up with solutions that are really adequate to the local situation, that really can solve the issues. And it's not some high-tech solution that we might bring from the global north that just doesn't work. And I think about 450 billion that that the Gates Foundation spent on high-tech solution, that's not what's needed. What's needed is really empowering locals and give them the ability, and then they basically will solve the issue. So that's our firm belief, and that's what I've seen every time when we're on the field. I'm absolutely amazed how they come up with solutions.
Thank you, Reto. And we have 11 minutes left. There's a clock here that I can see. So we have 2 more questions with each of you. So I just wanted to ask you, Diana, you've bridged cutting-edge science and humanitarian impact. How do we ensure that women, not just as users, but as inventors and investors, are at the forefront of the next wave of climate tech innovation?
Gosh, that's a hard one.
That's a long question.
Yeah, so the way that I'm trying to do that is to get sort of my journey out there so that people who are thinking about, doing this free fall of like, letting go of everything and going in and trying to launch something new, something ambitious, especially women, know that there are other people out there that have done it, and it's a messy process. It wasn't fun for me for a long time. And so I guess I didn't, so by putting my story out there, I want to encourage them that there's a way to get through this and there's a way to do it. I think when I started, I was a new mom and didn't have any career my career just pretty much evaporated. And so I was looking to do something where I could justify not spending time with my kid and make the world better for her. I end up having 3 daughters, so I have to model for all 3 of them. And so I decided I'm gonna start this company based on this idea that I had, like, how many ever years ago. So, but I hated it. I hated it for so long, and it was so lonely and so discouraging. And every day I thought I was waking up to fail like 50 times that day. So it's not the Silicon Valley, Mark Zuckerberg story of being an entrepreneur. So, but I wanted other women like me to feel like, and my daughters, when they become women, I wanted them to know that there was a way that if you decide that this is the impact you want to have in the world, you can actually go do it and you don't need anybody else's permission. So if I can get my story out there, as ugly and messy as it was, hopefully it helps somebody else to feel, I can do this too. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that personal story, Diana. Diana was talking about, leading with example to her daughters and women. So I wanted to ask you, Dominique, what lessons from your political leadership can be applied to empower women change makers in global sanitation and sustainability space?
So political lessons. Yeah. So I would say the first thing is wherever you go is get connected with people on the ground. Too many times you see NGOs going into locations and trying to present their own perspective without getting the local people involved. So getting the women involved, doing the interviews, understanding the needs, and making sure that whatever solutions you provide are solutions that, yes, you help build, but you build them with the community. I think it's really, really important. And I really think that if politicians were doing this, we would be in a better shape more globally. That's the first element. The second element I would say is one of the greatest advice I got was, whenever you see an opportunity, just say yes and then figure it out. Sometimes we take so much time to figure out things that you don't do something. So when you go on the ground, you see issues and you're like, oh, we could do it this way. Well, just do it. Do something. And at least you'll check, you'll assess it, reassess it, measure the results, and then improve on it. Otherwise, you stay very inactive, I find, and you like the action. And for those of you who were here this morning, just listening to Mary Robinson, 80 years old, and saying, well, let's just get things done. Well, that's really how I feel, and I think that's one of the big learnings I had from politics that would totally apply in deploying solutions on the ground and with organizations.
Thank you, Dominique. I would really like to sit more and talk to you all, but we are running out of time. So I have one last question that I would like to ask all our 3 panelists. And I already gave them the question, so I'm sure they're prepared. I'm just joking. But if you had the attention of every government or donor, every government and donor in the world for 30 seconds, I'll start with Reto. What would you tell them?
We definitely need to change, and I think it's quite a fundamental change that I think is needed. I'm calling it certainly systemic. I mean, it has to go from enabling basically the environment, looking not only at the problem but also the huge opportunities. For example, we produce biogas. We are now working on treating the effluent. We will soon be launching biofertilizer, locally produced. The biogas goes into the kitchen, so there are these huge opportunities that are out there, but we need to enable that environment. We need to encourage entrepreneurs, the local communities, that they basically can solve these issues if we create that right environment. The financing needs to be needed. And I think inspirational entrepreneurs and local community leaders have to be empowered. It's certainly not the centralized model coming from the global north that will solve it.
Thank you, Reto. Diana, same question.
Okay, so I have two messages. One is safe access to water and sanitation underpins every aspect of how people and the planet survive and thrive. So this isn't nice to have, this is must have for all of us. The second thing, which actually, you know, we talk so much about climate change. Water and sanitation get completely ignored in that conversation. People do not know how much, in terms of greenhouse gases, get thrown off by raw sewage and by the processes that we use to treat water. And so policymakers and investors, anybody who cares about climate change, needs to start actually understanding that water doesn't come for free, safe sanitation doesn't come for free. We only have so many water molecules in the universe or on this earth, and we need to recycle them, but that costs energy and that costs carbon. And so they need to start factoring that into climate change.
Thank you, Diana. Dominique.
So whenever we talk about climate, when we talk about the environment, we talk about water, one thing that is consistent is that women are more impacted than men. So if I had all the donors in front of me, I would say, whoever you give the money to, make sure that you have half women, half men at the table making the decisions. And I would be hopeful that that would be a great way of making the decisions. And another thing, since I like the panel we have, I would say just give us the money, we'll figure it out. That's what I
agree.
Say.
I'm on board. I'm on board. Thank you. Thank you, Dominique. And thank you all. Thank you for your honest and also energizing conversation. And please give a big round of applause for our panelists for joining us.